This episode of the e-commerce playbook is brought to you by Omnisend, the top-rated email and SMS marketing platform for online merchants. With Omnisend, setting up e-commerce automations is so simple you'll have them up and running before you finish your morning coffee. Plus, you can segment your customers based on their shopping habits and even dive into SMS or push notifications, all from one seamless dashboard. Omnisend isn't just another marketing tool, it's the secret weapon behind over 100,000 successful e-commerce brands. Whether it's crafting eye-catching emails or sending out timely texts, Omnisend helps you connect with your customers like never before. So don't wait. Your best campaigns are just a click away. Go to www.omnisend.com and start today. Hey, folks, welcome to a special holiday edition of the e-commerce playbook podcast. I'm your host, Richard Gaffin, Director of Digital Product Strategy here at Common Thread Collective. And of course, showing off his You Had Me at EBITDA ugly Christmas sweater is our CEO, Taylor Holiday. And by the way, I'm also wearing a matching one. There you go. Thank you to admission member Matt with the brand TB4A. If there's an accountant in your life or a finance enthusiast like Taylor who would be interested in some gear like this, go ahead, check him out, tb4a.com. And so anyway, here we are in our ugly Christmas sweaters talking about what's coming up in 2025. So Taylor, how are you doing today? What's going on?
Well, I'm at home. You guys can see my background if you're on YouTube, not my usual setting in the office. I also don't have a microphone. So our office was robbed last week and they did away with my microphone and my headphones. So I'm back on the AirPods, temporary technical malfunction. And so if the audio is a little bad, blame crime. The rising crime of California, just fits very well into everyone's area. So, but I'm good, man. I'm recovering a little from a chest cold. I do love my sweater. These kill in a family Christmas. People have no idea what I'm talking about, and just their eyes glaze over pretty quick. But makes me feel good.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so what we're talking about today is, and this is something I believe we did last year, maybe even the year before. But on Twitter and LinkedIn, X and LinkedIn, you dropped your 25 predictions for 2025, and look, I'm not going to say it ignited a firestorm, but it certainly brought a lot of comments. People sort of interested in expanding on some of these. So if you're interested in reading the full list, we're going to have the link to the post in the show notes if you want to check it out, because we're not going to get into all 25 today, but we are going to jump into 5 of them, which I think are sort of the most interesting or garner the most conversation. So let's start with item number 1 in your 25 predictions for 2025, which is that media buying becomes 98% automated. So yeah, expand on that a little bit more. By the way, I was going to say, what percentage do you think it's at now? And then what's the 2% left over afterwards?
That's a great question. So this kind of content is just it's like kindling for social media. It's just so perfectly built for people to engage and argue about. And what I would say is that you're undoubtedly going to see a slew of these into the next couple of weeks, and they're fun. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy it. But the biggest thing to remember is that what people really believe is best displayed by their behavior than by their words. I think in this topic in particular, I think we have an alignment around both. So the first 3 predictions there really relate to what an experience I'm having as it relates to how media buying is handled. And, at CTC, we're big proponents of using cost controls, which is a form of automation, right? It's assigning an input to a machine to allow them to operate against an objective that you define. So the manual part is you defining the objective, and then the automated part is allowing the system to make the allocation decisions within it. And I think inherent in that is what I really believe is happening here. And that's that I think that almost all manual media buying, and I'm going to define manual media buying as the decisions media buyers make to turn on or off ads, to raise or lower budgets, and to adjust bids up and down, or to change bid objectives, are almost all net negative. This is what I see, is that whether it's, and I mean this for our own decision-making as well, my decision-making in an ad account personally, when I participated, to CTC media buyers, to media buyers at other agencies, to media buyers in-house, almost anything humans do in this process is really negative and negatively affects the outcome in the vast majority of cases. And it's because the decision-making process is so poor in terms of the information inputs, the horizons that you're using, the calculations that you use to determine how connected they are to causal impacts on the future. It's just really messy, and it's really hard to execute, and it's riddled with emotion and bias. And I think if you see what's happened in investing as a corollary for what I think is going to happen in media buying is that you went from sort of like manual stock picking to developing indexes that sort of diversify risk to now like algorithmic hedge fund trading. And I think media buying is really not too dissimilar from that as a practice, which is that you are buying inventory on different ad platforms against a thesis of future return on investment. And that is an exercise is sort of really predisposed to being done super effectively through algorithmic trading software. And I think what we're going to see is more and more movement towards that kind of control and systems across media buying. If you think about what an MMM is trying to do, it's allowing a human to get a read on a channel level allocation of budget based on efficiency. And I think all you're going to see is like, rather than then those kinds of systems just outputting results that then humans make decisions on, is that you're just going to see those kinds of systems make the decisions themselves. And that's going to be for the best. And so I think we're going to see more and more, not just at the individual channel level, in other words, not just on Meta, but with your entire media budget across all available ad inventory against some business objective, machines sort of handling day-to-day allocation and budget optimization.
Okay. So let's go back to one of my original questions then, which was, where do you think the percentage is right now in terms of machine to human?
Yeah. So if you think about that, the most manual version of this would be like placing an IO manually in an insertion order against a very specific book of inventory. Like that's old school, right? That's like the least automated is I'm going to write a purchase for a specific amount of money on a specific fixed CPM against a specific set of inventory. And then I'm going to wait weeks, realize that value. That was like the very beginning of this spectrum. We've moved a long ways away from that, right? If you think about what PMAX as an example represents, it represents a bundling of all of the available ad inventory on a single platform like Google. So it takes your display, your YouTube, your search, your shopping, bundles it into one and allocates across those resources. Same thing with something like ASC on Meta, where you get Instagram feed, Facebook news feed, IG stories, IG reels, all bundled into one ad product that you're then allowing Meta to handle the allocation across it. Then you get into some of the dynamic creative asset stuff where you're allowing headline variation tests and image variation tests to be handled automated. So you're seeing this progression. So in terms of a percentage, I don't know, maybe 35% is automated in a way, but you're seeing progression towards it every day where more and more of the tasks are being automated away. And then the big one for me is just like, there's a huge time suck related to literally just building out campaigns. And for those of you that are media buyers, this is like literally going into Ads Manager, clicking a bunch of buttons to construct the actual campaign. Same thing on Google. In other words, that stuff's just going to go away. It's just such a waste of time for humans to be doing it. Literally just button clicking across a bunch of different options at the campaign level, at the ad set level, at the ad level, uploading images, those kinds of things. That's going to be a big chunk of it that takes you from 30 to 60% because so much of the work is just in that area. And then the tail of it is probably then to move out from an individual channel into broader cross-channel budget application, and then ultimately the creative function. And so those pieces I think are what are next on the spectrum of automation.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's talk about like, what does the 2% look like coming up? What's left for a human to do on the media buying side?
Yeah, I think there's still some representation of inventory and product and value and business objective that still at the very end are fundamentally human decisions. And I also think there's a data layer related to the product inventory side that I don't see these platforms integrating with yet. And I don't think it'll be this year. So I think that humans are going to have to represent the available inventory. They're going to have to represent the business objective, and they're going to still have to represent the creative choices that are being made to some degree for some brands. So I think somewhere in there is the last, and 2% is sort of arbitrary. It could be 10%, it could be something like that. But there's still this like last piece of there's a data layer missing from the systems. There's a very human decision about, are we trying to grow fast or slow? What's the overall objective that you're asking the system to deliver? And then some portion of the creative piece that's still going to be very human.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump to the next one then that we want to talk about today, which is, this was item number 8 on the list, and I'll read it out here. There's an omni-channel digital brand product layer that sits on top of Shopify, Amazon, Walmart, Ulta, TikTok shops, etc. to manage your brand. Poses a real threat to Shopify unless they can get there first. So That's a lot of people had kind of questions or wanted clarification on that. So let's unpack that a little
Yeah.
bit.
It's going to be the hardest one for me to explain what I see in my head here. But I think Shopify, if you think about what it was originally, it was a website builder. Like it was a way to build an e-commerce website and transact, right? And so there was a lot of templates and design and thinking about your .com experience associated with Shopify. And what I see as a trend, and I think this is another one of my points in there, is that .com as a point of transaction for businesses is diminishing in importance. And so with it, then it would be any layer that is specifically associated with it. And what I see instead is that there's this digital omni-channel approach. Now, omni-channel often includes retail, but I'm actually going to set aside physical retail in this conversation for a second and say that what I see is between Amazon, which is I think the big behemoth in this conversation, your .com, social commerce products like TikTok shops, Meta shops, YouTube shops as important layers. Something has to think about allocating inventory across all of those channels. Something has to think about how media is affecting performance across all those channels. Something has to bundle your revenue view every day from across all those channels and allow you to make decisions about your business at a broader point of view. And I think that this is one of the limitations. Shopify has these like integrations that are like, they try and turn all those things into channel views. And so they're trying to bundle them together, but they still don't do it very well. Like Amazon in particular is not integrated very seamlessly into your storefront view.
Mhm.
And I think that something could do this in a way that I know that what our customers want and what's really happening in spreadsheets is they're taking all these different revenue sources, they're trying to compile them into a single point of view. Someone might be just like yelling like, oh, Taylor, this is just like what an ERP system does, or, like in a way that is why this is such a big problem. And I agree, but I do think that there's a customer centric view that actually thinks about this as a UI that helps you as an operator think about where your customers are and shows you it in a novel way that I think is an opportunity. And this sort of underlies a bigger philosophical belief I have, which is that the transaction layer will always move closer to the discovery layer over time. And if I explain this for a second, if you think about ultimately what retail wasn't retail for many people was a bringing together of that, the discovery and transaction layer into the same spot, right? Was like you'd go to the store, you'd find products. You actually went to the mall to find out about a brand, to discover new things, and then ultimately you could transact right there. Well, what happened first was that the discovery layer got bifurcated. Like the first discovery moved into the social network of the world, right? And then all of a sudden the online thing was an attempt to bring back the transaction layer to the point of discovery, which had moved online. And now, even just the gap between discovery on TikTok or Meta or Google or somewhere else, and then the steps required to get to transaction on your website is too far. It's
Mhm.
too cumbersome still. And so what you see, TikTok shops, what it represents is the like merging of those layers again to transaction and discovery all happening at the same point. Amazon buying and interacting with media on the front end and bringing Black Friday promotion into TV shows where you can transact on things you see in the TV shows. It's like this
Mhm.
merging of discovery and transaction is what's happening. And really, a website is just like a place you'd have to go that's a longer step and an unnecessary step for a transaction layer. I think that's moving closer to discovery. So that's like a philosophical point of view I have on the
Mhm.
future of commerce that I think minimizes and makes the .com sort of feel like retail. It feels like a place you'd have to go that I don't necessarily need to go if I want to buy something.
Yeah. Do you sell stuff online? If you do, you need Omnisend. Yes, that Omnisend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Like watching steady lines go up and up and up. Just automate your email and SMS campaigns with Omnisend, set it up once, then sit back and watch the sales roll in while you snooze. Oh, are you still awake? Then give Omnisend a try and start getting sales so steady they'll definitely put you to sleep. Just go to www.omnisend.com or click the first link in the show notes. So this feels like it's sort of a combination of things. One is the continuing, like, I guess, perpetuation of things like TikTok shops, whatever, bring the transaction closer to the point of discovery. But then also it's like some sort of tool or dashboard or whatever to manage or view all of these sort of revenue streams at the same time, which currently doesn't seem like it really exists. And I know that's like a little bit of what we're trying to do with the PROPHIT system, which we
Uh,
talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Right, because all these points of distribution have different margin values, right? Like, because each platform's taking a different fig, and so trying to get to a view of
Mhm.
like your revenue and the marginal value of that revenue on a daily basis across all these different sources is really complicated for people. And so I think there's an opportunity here that sort of takes and gives you a view of your digital revenue every day, and then sort of comprises it down into source, and then also allows you to look at and understand that in a really seamless, clear, cool way that's going to be really
Mhm.
powerful. That I think there's a UI yet to be developed here that I think is going to be something that emerges over the next year or so.
Okay, cool. All right, let's speaking of, well, I guess sort of speaking of platforms, let's jump into number 10 here. And this is, I think, the item that created the most controversy, let's say, in the comments anyway, which was number 10 was AppLovin fades into a small percentage of media budgets. And so this is interesting in light of like the conversation we had on AppLovin a few weeks ago, and then additional data that we put out on it is that there seems to be genuine incremental value to AppLovin. It seems like it's potentially a huge opportunity in the way other new platforms have not been. So is this a 180 on AppLovin, or what exactly is your prediction here, or why
Y-
this would happen?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a 180. I think it's a constrained enthusiasm that I think
Sure.
is the internet's having. Is that I believe that the fundamental problem to be solved for most advertising platforms in order to steal meaningful share of wallet
Mhm.
is to solve for incremental positive new customer acquisition at the end of the day. And I don't see good evidence that AppLovin's doing that at scale. What I
Mhm.
see is in a lot of cases that there's some amount of positive incremental contribution to be had across new and returning customers. But what I see is very quickly, absent any exclusions presently, budget that begins to very quickly concentrate into remarketing and existing customers and could potentially be driving incremental value there. But the problem is that fatigues very quickly for
Mhm.
most brands. And so what I see is a demand influx of a lot of brands that want to spend in this channel. And I don't know about the supply expansion potential. And I just don't know about how much I have not seen a lot of good data about brands spending a ton of money and driving profitable new customer acquisition at
Mhm.
continued growing scale. So what I see is a channel that will be a part of the media mix at some small percentage and may improve over time. But the idea that it's going to rival meta scale, I do not believe that at
Mhm.
all. And so I think that's what we're going to see is that in this period in particular, Q4, there's a lot of demand capture that is an important part of driving value for brands. But that is not the
Mhm.
case as we move out of this period of gift giving and demand realization. And so I probably am more bearish than most on how much budget is going to end up in this channel.
Yeah. And if I'm remembering our conversation correctly, part of this might be it's like, what are the odds that there's genuine discovery to be had on this app, or what, like that there's truly a new market or new people you wouldn't be reaching otherwise on, let's say, Meta in
Yeah.
AppLovin, right?
Yeah. I find it doesn't make any sense to me. Like
Yeah.
like a very high overlap between the user bases here
Yeah.
in
I
a
was
way
gonna say,
that you're literally taking the same ads and serving them
yeah.
to the same people. Now, if the demographics are wildly different, then that's interesting. And that
Mhm.
seems to be the case. But that also is a little bit of a red flag that, like, let's say you're a business that your core demographic is like men aged 30, and suddenly you, like, for a moment, unlock a bunch of older women as a demographic in a
Mhm.
gifting period. Like, why does that seem sustainable into the future for who your brand is? Like, I don't really understand that.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot still to be proven here. We're excited. I'm hopeful that it continues to scale. We're spending money there. We're going to help our people do it. I think there's a lot to be gained on the product side in terms of innovation, in terms of what they put, what kind of product features they roll out. But yeah, I think we need to look at these things clear eyed and with good data and evidence that you can drive the kind of outcomes for your business that you want. And we're in the process of continuing to discover that more so that I'm like, yes, this is for sure gold rush.
Okay. So that's actually kind of lets us segue nicely into number 19, which is the next one we wanted to talk about, which was the idea here that new customer obsession fades a bit. So we're talking about AppLovin as potentially being a poor way to acquire new customers. But at the same time, we're also saying new customer obsession is going to fade a bit. As brands mature, they realize that monetizing their existing customers in new ways is a better business strategy than just endlessly paying more for new ones. And then you have an example from Simple Modern. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, like I think if you followed Simple Modern's recent launch of Trevi Fountain, yeah, Trevi. They launched a consumable like liquid IV competitor, and if you listen to Mike Beckham talk about it, what he says is that the maturity of the hard good water bottle business has growth limitations. It's not to say that it's not going to grow in the future. It's just to say that like the LTV on that business is really core, and their distribution is already so large that the percentile growth in the future is like going to be more moderate than it's been in the past. It's not to say that it's not future growth. But what they have instead is like millions of customers who are using their water bottles all the time. And so if they could turn those customers, even a small fraction of them, into consumers of a consumable, that they would end up with a significant increase to value for the overall enterprise. And so that is, I think, a really important understanding of business strategy that I would also liken to what you see someone like Ridge Wallet do, which is to say that when the wallet business runs into a marginal frontier problem in its new customer acquisition, the solution to that problem isn't figure out how to be better at my next ads forever. It's to expand into a new category like luggage or rings as a growth potential. Now, that's not about monetizing the same customer base, but my main point here is that just for a lot of businesses, the solution to their growth problem is not more efficient media dollars next year in the same category on the same product. There's a real limitation to that idea. And people just pound their head against the wall trying to constantly improve their ad performance on more ad dollars next year, when it would be way easier in some cases to look at product expansion, distribution expansion, or to start to reintroduce some work around reactivation of existing customers as part of that media mix. Because there are brands that have millions of customers that are hard excluding their entire customer list from their ads. And these customers haven't shopped with them in years. They are functionally not an active customer. On the extreme end, one of the things we're considering doing is we may redefine an existing customer revenue to only be revenue from active customers, and then to put everybody else back into new customer acquisition as a function. Because I just don't think the idea that you had a customer that bought from you a year ago has no longer responded to any of your emails, like it makes sense to hard exclude them from all your advertising.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Although ultimately, like it kind of what we're saying is like in order to reach that existing customer again, as if they were new, it's necessary to develop new product or I don't know, add something to it or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think to continue to evolve the product, to innovate on it, and then to just go after reselling to them again, to remind them about the thing that they once bought and loved with some new compelling reason, right? And I think that is the impetus for us to think about, something as simple as like, what is the iPhone 13 versus 14, right? Like that there's this idea that you have to re-engage your customer base all the time around the thing that you sell by continuing to improve it over time. And in doing so, you can kind of reignite energy to repurchase your thing persistently. But it's very hard to have a static product that you just continue to go to market with over many, many years and continue to just change the creative on it and get more efficient acquisition over time. That's like a really poor business strategy.
Yeah. So to maybe incorporate this into the squeezing the sponge analogy that we always use. And we have a visit. What's your dog's name?
That's Jack, short for Jacqueline.
Oh, Jack short for Jacqueline. I love it. Classy name. So basically if we include this we incorporate it into the squeezing the sponge analogy, the idea here is that you need to acquire new customers in order to maintain an active customer file, or your existing customer file will shrink. But in this case, what we're saying is that the existing customer file can just be, there's a recycling element to this as well.
Well, because there's another part of the sponge. If you think about like the net active customer report, the way to grow it is two different ways. One is net new customers. The second is what we call reactivation, or taking lapsed customers and reactivating them. It serves the same function as net new customer gain. And so I think in both ways, that grows your active customer file, right? You take a customer from lapsed to active through reactivation, has the same effect as acquiring a new customer, right? And so I think both of those need to be thought of. And in some brands that have huge lapsed customer files, that's probably actually a period where you could increase focus and then reduce the dependency on new customer acquisition for the sake of growth of the active customer file and still be successful.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pivot to the next one here, because this is specifically about product development or product innovation. And number 24 here on the list is product development is the new head of growth. So obviously I can see the way that it plays into the one we just discussed, but yeah, let's unpack that a little more.
I think that for most brands, if they do the calculation, they're going to find that the ROIC potential, return on invested capital potential in e-commerce, product development might be the highest potential return in the business. And it's way higher than ad spend in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about, again, I'm just going to use the Ridge example, developing a suitcase and the cost to do that versus the potential category revenue realization. If you actually build a business case and say, I could take $500,000 and I could plow it into meta ad spend, say 20% annual return on invested capital, or I could take $500,000 and invent a new product line that has a $20 million TAM potential for me as a business. I just think that what brands are going to see over and over again is that the math for growth on investing in new product development is going to be better than the math on growth on just deploying their next hundreds of thousands of dollars into ad spend. Mm-hmm. And so the next tranche of growth for the business is better invested in through product development than it is where they're at on their marginal frontier of ad spend. And so I think that is where the best way to grow is going to be through something new and novel added to the mix than it is just something that already exists. And I think that's what people are discovering all the time. And if you watch the best brands, everyone looks up to these operators. It's like, watch what they've done in terms of how their growth is occurring. And I even think for HexCloud, you're going to see this too. Like, I just think that this is what brands are doing. It's what I've watched Born Primitive do really well as our partner. It's what I know Skull Candy's doing as their growth to the future. Like, the best brands we have are looking out and not just saying, okay, CTC, our expectation is that you double our media spend at the same efficiency next year. They're going, okay, let's get small gains out of the core business next year by maintaining same or slightly worse efficiency. And we're going to introduce this new thing that allows us to add in new tranches of growth. Same thing in a service business. We don't just look out and go, okay, core business, you have to grow forever. Here's a new line of business in the Global Accelerator. Here's a new line of business in retention. Yeah. The same thing is true for everybody, is that is the best mechanism for growth in the next year. So if I have somebody who's in charge of growth for my business, traditionally the head of growth doesn't get to decide the product. And that's why I've always thought it the dumb title, is because the best growth mechanisms are often related to an expansion of distribution product.
So I was actually, so when we were talking, it just brought to mind, like, I don't know if have you ever read the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding? Do you know that book?
Many years ago, but give me some reminders.
It's an old class. This is probably from 2001 or 2 or something like that. But anyway, with healthy skepticism around the idea that any of these laws are immutable, one point that they made in that book that I has just stuck with me ever since is that, like, there's a very clear correlation with the frequency of new product release and the success of a business. Is that every business that they worked with that was successful in some way was just because they had like a very, like, the cadence of product release was regular and it was frequent. And that's just kind of like, it's not a discussion that we have a lot in this world, but it's clear why that's important. I was going to ask, like, so at this time last year when we had this conversation, a lot of the conversation was around basically battening down the hatches, tightening costs, ensuring first order profitability, essentially. But it sounds like the conversation, at least in your mind, has changed. So what about, let's say, I don't know, the macroeconomic environment or just sort of the general environment of 2025 has you in this mindset as opposed to thinking about cost? And that's
a great question. Is because you can't cut your way to growth forever, right? there was a set of behaviors that many brands have to undergo, which is to reset the health of their business on the financial side. And like our industry needed that. And for our partners, we're actually like guiding them through that. And so now we're getting to the other side of, okay, we're healthy now. Okay, we now have to grow against this new healthy structure. And it's like, okay, let's go out and recreate that now. And the answer isn't to go back to what we used to do, which was try and spend more money in the ad platforms to do it. It's like, okay, how are we actually going to build a business that can produce continued profitable growth? And I just think that what you just said is so right, that brands that consistently produce new things give people a reason to continue to engage with them in new ways. Like, and it's so critical to have that as a function of your business. Now, I want to be clear here that this doesn't mean like crazy wild bets on inventory across things that are not proven at all. And in many ways, sometimes the best new product is like a refined and updated version of your core product in a way that gives people a reason to buy that one, but I really think that this is like, as we go now into this era of profitable growth, I'd say we're moving more into that stage with our customers who have been with us over the course of the year. And now, for those of you that haven't reached that growth or that profit expectation, we're still here to help you guide through that. But I think the conversation, the focus into next year is, okay, we're healthy now. Bottom line looks good. What does it look like to grow this business into the future?
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. All right. Well, so I think that's going to cover it for at least our kind of going over the 25 here. But again, if you want to check out the rest of these, it's on Taylor's Twitter, it's on LinkedIn. We'll put a link in the show notes so you can check them out further. But any final thoughts here, or maybe let's see, initial thoughts on 2025 that if you kind of want to share here?
Well, I'm excited. I mean, the last one in there was a teaser too. It relates to CTC. Yeah. And what I'll say is that we have some really exciting things on the horizon for us as a business that involve sort of expansion of who we are and how we can interact with our customers to bring them more opportunities for this kind of thing. We're continuing to do some really cool stuff on the AI side that I'm excited to announce. And I just think that we're in a really cool era of the sort of convergence of software and service and AI into bringing customers cool opportunities. And so I'm as excited about our business as I've been ever as we head into 2025. And so hopefully we'll get to share more about this in the coming months, but we are taking the challenge ourselves to continue to introduce new products. That's what I would say, is that we feel the same way about our business that I just shared about yours, which is that we need to bring new things to bear for our customers that help them solve problems. And that requires us to be innovative and causes us to disrupt ourselves and to find more way to help you all do awesome stuff into the future. And so we're embracing that challenge as well.
That's right. All right. Big things coming in 2025. Thank you all for listening. Happy holidays to everybody. And of course, we will be back with you in the new year. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye. Hey, everyone. I wanted to let you know that we've opened up limited slots for PROPHIT system build-outs. 2025 is right around the corner, and success is going to come down to one thing: planning. Our PROPHIT system setup includes a custom model 2025 forecast, a custom media plan, a cohort retention model, and a daily marketing calendar, all of which combine to set daily expectations for 35 key e-commerce metrics. We'll then track performance daily versus forecast and execute accordingly to optimize for predictable, profitable growth. You'll be able to see how you perform relative to goal in real time. So if you're the CMO or CFO of an 8 to 9 figure e-commerce brand, go to PROPHITsystem.com to learn more and see how you can get your profitable growth plan built in just 30 days. That's PROPHIT system.com.